Matt Walsh says, we need more mic drop moments just like this one. And it's about trans skeletons, everybody's favorite topic. So let's get into it.
Also wanted to mention this from Daily Wire. An anthropology researcher at the University of Pittsburgh was incredulous after champion female collegiate swimmer Riley Gaines pinned him on a basic question about the biological difference between men and women, which prompted raucous laughter from students.
So for those who don't know, Riley Gaines, she was a swimmer who decided to make a conservative grifting career out of tying Leah Thomas for 5th place in the NCAA championship. It's really funny. They tied for 5th place, so it's not like, there were leagues of cis women that were ahead of her. Instead of just like training, trying to swim faster, becoming a better athlete, she decides that the real money is in joining the conservative grift.
Gaines, a recent University of Kentucky graduate who tied for 5th place with transgender identifying swimmer Leah Thomas at the NCAA championship last year, recently delivered a talk at the University of Pittsburgh about men and women's sports to a room packed with students. Gabby Yearwood, a senior lecturer at the school's anthropology department, rejected the notion that researchers can use skeletal evidence to determine a deceased person's sex.
This is Matt Walsh's, one of his favorite talking points, the idea of, oh, well, when they dig you up 100 years from now, they're going to know what sex you really are. Let's see how the anthropology professor responds to that.
This is always going to be one of the many kind of mic drop rejoinders that you can have if you're on the pro-sanity side in the gender discussion, is by asking, look, however somebody identifies, they die, they're dug up, their bones are dug up by archaeologists or anthropologists 100 years from now. What are those scientists going to say about that person's sex?
Mic drop. Wow. First off, just like whether or not somebody identifies you as like a certain biological sex shouldn't really have any kind of dictate over how you're going to live your life socially, get certain treatments that might help you, such as like medical transition. The whole premise of this argument is that like, oh, well, because they're going to be able to figure out your sex, then like, oh, you can't do anything like gendered wise. But that just doesn't make sense. I mean, like, honestly, if I'm in the grave, it doesn't really matter what archaeologists discover about me because I'm dead at that point. It also conflates sex and gender in the way that if an archaeologist was trying to gender a skeleton, they would look for anthropological and cultural markers, not like sex markers. But then if you want to get into the actual sexing of skeletons, it's a bit of an interesting conversation. Let's go ahead and see how that goes.
Because they will be able to determine based on that, the sex, the gender identity won't mean anything anymore. This person tried to claim the opposite. Let's watch this.
I actually have a question for you. You being an anthropologist, which anthropology is the study of human civilization, human biological and social. So if you were to dig up a human, two humans, in 100 years from now, both man and woman, could you tell the difference? Strictly off of bones?
No, because there's a wide range Have any of you been to archaeological sites? Have any of you studied biological anthropology? I'm just saying. I've got over 150 years of data. I'm just curious as to why I'm being laughed at when
I believe it or not, I have put a lot of research into this because I'm not. I'm just telling you that I have considered all viewpoints.
And the mic drop moment is they didn't even let him answer. Just kind of like a first off rhetorical criticism. The way that you should approach that question isn't just by outright saying no. What the actual answer is, which I'll go ahead and go into because they're not even going to air the actual answer. The actual answer is that, well, you can make an educated guess, but the educated guess is not as accurate as people might like to think it is. We've got this peer-reviewed research study right here. They examined all available methods for identifying the sex of skeletons. They did this within kind of a better representative sample of skeletons. Often these kind of different mechanisms we use, there's lots of average differences between male and female skeletons. Like, for example, female skeletons typically have like a wider pelvis. Male skeletons will typically have like broader shoulder bones. These kind of things. Yeah, these kind of averages do exist. And that's what allows us to make an educated guess. If we're going to go with skeletons that have any kind of like ambiguous results across methods, that's 70% of skeletons most skeletons don't fall cleanly into one side based off of all available tests. Even if we're using a composite method, what this study showed is that our best estimates based off of a composite method only be like majority placed in one category 85% of the time. That's 15% of skeletons were so sexually ambiguous that we can't tell 100% for sure whether or not it's going to be a male skeleton or a female skeleton. Perps like to think that skeletons between males and females look like this. No, in actuality, they're a lot more closer than people might think. If people are actually curious why male and female skeletons are different on average, it's because of hormones. And we actually have research studies which show that transsexual people who take cross-sex hormones actually experience changes in the volume and area parameters, the actual bone structure, and the other bone parameters of their bones. Particularly if you transition before the age of 25, which is when the bone plates kind of fuse. We even have research studies on the development of bone structures in trans adolescents who were able to go on puberty blockers. Their bone structures actually resemble that of the sex they transition to. If we're going off of like kind of bone parameters, actually the transsexual population who transitioned young enough will be in line with the sex they transition to. Even then, if you transition later, you can still have some bone change. With this all said, we're talking about an educated guess that is 85% accurate at best. That's kind of the actual truth about the sexing of skeletons. Not as binary as people might like to think. Human bodies are not as binary as people might like to think. Between intersex bodies and just biology is complicated. It's fascinating. Men and women are a lot more similar than people like to think, and I think that's a fun and interesting fact that we should celebrate.
Okay, he never explains how that could possibly be the case.
Because you cut the clip short.
Well, no, you can't tell the sex at all. But
No, that's actually deceptive. The question that he was asked was, can you definitively tell the sex? And he answered no. Saying you cannot definitively tell the sex is different from saying you can't tell it at all. Matt Walsh actually just was very deceptive there.
his reasoning, his defense of that is, well, I have a PhD, so I'm the expert. So this is what I say goes.
I mean, you don't really know his defense because you didn't show it, but
This is the kind of the Tony Fauci approach. You know, we've heard from Fauci that he is, I am the science. He says, I'm the science. If you disagree with me, you disagree with science. I represent science, and this is how they all feel about themselves. They get the credentials, they go and they get the expensive piece of paper, and now they represent science. So science is not what it actually is, which is a process of understanding the physical world. That's
I mean, maybe it would be if you actually showed his explanation of the physical world, but you didn't.
all that science is. It's the process by which we come to understand phenomena in the physical world. That's
So the process which shows that, like, sexual differentiation of skeletons is like 85% accurate at best. That's what the facts actually show.
That's what it actually is. But to these people who call themselves scientists, science is whatever they say. It's their own viewpoint, and they are sort of avatars for science itself.
No, you didn't show what he was gonna say. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going on this long tirade without like even acknowledging any kind of like data or arguments he put forth because he didn't show it.
Total nonsense. I mean, he is denying. He's denying like the entire history of anthropology and archaeology. And you can go if you want to check the facts here. You can go on Google and just look up countless, hundreds of stories, thousands of stories of scientists digging up some ancient bones from centuries ago and all the things they're able to tell about that person.
Interesting how he says, go look at the stories, go look at the anecdotes, rather than look at the research literature we have on sex differentiation in skeletons. The question isn't about whether or not we can make an educated guess. The question he was asked was whether or not this determination is definitive. And so you want to look at the research of sex differentiation in skeletons or sex determination in skeletons. And the research shows that no, it's not definitive. It's an educated guess. And yeah, I do think the researcher could have done better with his answer saying we can make an educated guess rather than just saying flat out no, because Riley intentionally phrased the question as, using black and white language in order to elicit this response.
It's not just, as we have been trying to establish, it's not just about hormones. It's not about one individual thing.
Well, wait, is Matt conceding that biological sex is a composite variable? Hold up. I don't think I've ever seen Matt concede that biological sex is a composite variable for. I believe he's always defined biological sex as like reproductive capacity. So if he's acknowledging that hormones is part of biological sex, then that would contradict his claims that he makes in other cases where he says that it's impossible to change your sex or mutate your sex in any kind of way. Did he actually just concede that biological sex is a composite variable?
If you are a woman, then your entire body is, attest to that fact. And as long as some part of your body remains, then they'll be able to determine.
So he's not fully committing to the biological sex as a composite variable fact about the world. Under this perspective, he says like, oh, if you're a woman, then like everything about your body is going to show woman. You have to ignore the existence of intersex people in order to make that point. Okay, I guess like he almost implicitly acknowledged the composite nature of sex while refusing to acknowledge that intersex people exist. Weird take. And that's the entire clip. Not actually going to show the science, because the science actually disagrees with him. He says just like, oh, look at studies where we've made a guess about like skeletons, because yeah, there are studies where we make an educated guess. This educated guess is about 85% accurate, and it depends on the hormones that were present in your body when you were particularly during puberty and before the age of 25. Crazy stuff.